Hi everyone, thanks for joining in. I'm excited to have Jackie French with me. Hi Jackie.
Hi, lovely to be here.
And I've spoken to you a few times before and excited to be speaking to you again. For those who don't know Jackie French AM is an author, historian, and an honorary Wombat, Senior Australian of the
Definitely one.
Year for 2025, and patron and ambassador for organisations for kids, wildlife, and literacy, with the motto A book can change a child's life. A book can change the world, and if you want intelligent children, give them books. If you want more intelligent children, give them more books. And her latest book is The Whisperer's War. I've got my copy here. So The Whisperer's War is a spy novel, romance, mystery based on real events set in the 1940s. So, wondering if you want to start off, Jackie, by telling us a bit more about The Whisperer's War.
Oh, it's interesting. I only just realised today um, there's the plot of the book and there's also what the book's about, and that's
Mm,
different. The plot of the book is about an aristocratic spy. Um, in Britain during World War II, a very large number of people who mattered, whether in the public service or even in government, were actually fascists. They were very sympathetic to Germany.
mm,
That didn't mean that they were traitors, but they were sympathetic. And there was, so the book is based on the attempt to replace the Duke of Windsor and put him back on the throne again.
mm,
And this is the non-fiction book. It really nearly did happen. It was only that American intelligence found out that they were going to smuggle him off on a Swedish friend's yacht and land him in Britain, where the BBC would think they're covering something else, but he would give a live broadcast saying that he could today have a treaty with Hitler. The bombs will stop, the rationing will stop, everything will stop tomorrow. I can do this for you. And of course, it would go out live, and so it couldn't be stopped.
mm,
However, as I said, the American intelligence got wind of it. But this book is primarily about that plot. So that's the plot of the book, but it's
mm.
not about that. It's the only book I've written which is based on a sort of daydream of mine. Every night before I go to sleep, ever since I've been a kid, I've told myself a story, a sort of happy story, a story that really is really lovely, nice things are happening. And one of them was a place in World War II where three evacuee children who'd been through absolutely horrendous things suddenly find this place of incredible comfort and an enormous library and cellar full of
Mm,
food and
mm,
trout and things, rabbits and eagles,
mm,
and it's everything, absolutely everything an elected child would want. And I found myself putting that in the book. It's also um, it's the love story between Lady Diana and also an Australian and British intelligence who she works for, an organisation which is very, very closely based on the real one, including the small snake that the
Oh,
head of the
really?
organisation
Okay.
kept in his pocket. That's true.
Yeah.
The most impossible things in this book are actually true. Even their plane flight to
Mm.
Australia actually
Oh,
was a real
really?
one.
Yeah.
But no, the intelligence agency she works for tells her that she is not to have anything to do with the Australian pilot. And all of us have seen all the movies and Falls War. We think these brave Englishmen who
Mm,
saved Britain through the Brits. But it wasn't. In fact, they didn't have the trained, experienced pilots. Nearly all of them, particularly at the beginning, were
mm,
Australian, South African, Canadian,
mm,
from the USA, Poles, and Danes. As one said, the only English accent you would hear on a base would be the tea lady. It wouldn't be from any of the ground crew or from any of the other RWF. So, look, it's about that. It's about their love story, and I won't give away why. this man of, well, he's heroic.
Yeah.
Um, um, he does heroic things through it. So
Mm,
why on earth this man, an impeachable integrity, they tell her not to be involved with?
mm,
Um, it's about many things, but I think it's also about why do we cling to the myths of the past? The Duke of Windsor didn't ever abdicate willingly. He was tricked into doing it.
mm,
We know we've got the things of the people who were there. We've got the Prime Minister's thing.
mm,
He didn't write the speech saying he did it for the woman he loved. He wrote a speech calling on the people of Britain to rise up and rebel and make him king again. And
mm,
it was the Prime Minister who wrote that speech and convinced him to give it, because if he admitted he'd been tricked into signing the abdication, he'd look like a twit.
mm,
Um,
mm,
he'd signed away his right to live in Britain, so there was
mm,
nothing he could do. Um, all of these things have been known for so long. How is it that we keep making a romantic hero about a man who is a war criminal? He was the
mm,
one who suggested the Blitz to Hitler. There's even a letter that exists where he's actually telling Hitler to make the Blitz even worse and soften them up so they'll welcome me when I arrive.
mm.
Um, how for so long have we accepted the myth of the romantic hero king
Yeah.
when he
Mm,
was um, well, I also have to say I'm very sorry for him. I think if he'd been born a butcher or
yeah.
anything else, he'd
Yeah.
made a
He
very
would have
nice
been.
scoutmaster
Yeah.
and probably had a really happy marriage and been a really
Mm,
nice man. He
mm,
just was never meant to be a king.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so look, I also do feel very, very sorry for
Mm,
him. I don't think he was very strong-minded. I think he was really just swept away by history and events and
mm,
really couldn't understand what was happening a lot of the time. So I do
yeah.
feel very sorry for him.
Mm.
But
Yeah, and I've read The
it's relevant.
Whisperers and found that
Yeah.
like really interesting, the story behind
Mm.
it all. Belinda, who's watching, said she's also read it and loved it. She loves that it's a mix of historical fact and fiction.
Mm.
I'm wondering the story behind the Duke of Windsor and that. How long have you, like, when did you first find out about it, and how long have you been thinking about writing about it?
Um, Look, I first found out about the suspicion of it. Look, it must have been about 30 years ago.
Mm,
There was an article in the American magazines about it. But I was really sure of it when Prime Minister Baldwin's, I came across Prime Minister Baldwin's autobiography,
mm,
when he was the one, he said that not only was he tricked, but he, Baldwin, was the one who wrote the speech,
mm,
because the speech the Duke was going to give was so absolutely impossible.
mm,
Now, this is an autobiography by a Prime Minister. The letters exist. I also, look, I can't remember when I heard, I think I suddenly do remember now. The first thing I heard was a rumour that a group of special forces, British special forces, had been sent in front of the front line when they captured Germany to get hold of the letters that the Duke had written to Hitler, and that men had actually died
mm,
um, getting those letters, and those letters had either been destroyed and never been released.
mm,
Um, and so I think that was the first. That was the first thing, but that was more a rumor.
mm,
I didn't have any proof that. I still don't have any proof
mm.
that that happened. I think that was actually told by what's his name, who wrote James Bond. He wrote about the as fact, not fiction. So as I
Yeah.
said, look, it's not as upset, but that was where I first started to wonder. And it's it's a it's admitted that Hitler thought that the Duke was going to be king.
Mm,
We know that
mm,
the Germans kept their beautiful mansion intact, etc., in France for them to move into,
mm,
etc. The real question mark, though, was what did the Duke think?
mm,
I mean, after all, he was crazy, so
mm,
he's not a terribly good, reliable source of what was going to happen.
mm,
Um, I think for me, this book is a romance in the old-fashioned way, as well as the modern idea. A modern idea of a romance is, just sort of two people who fall in love, etc., etc. And it is a romance like that. But the old idea of a romance was um, people doing great things for good reasons. Chivalrous knights and ladies who go off and do wonderful things for poor. And that was the old idea of a romance of people doing really, really extraordinary but good things.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really what this book is about. And there were just so many wonderful anecdotes, others that I really wish I could have put into it. One, women were allowed to be pilots, but only of unarmed aircraft from one to another. And the early uniform was a skirt, and the parachute line went through the legs.
Oh.
And one woman was piloting her plane to deliver it, and the whole undercarriage fell off.
Oh.
Now, the obvious thing to do for that is to actually get height and parachute out. But she realised that if she parachuted out, the thing between her legs would go up and everyone would see her knickers and her suspender belt and her stockings, because in the wartime, the stockings only went to your knee. So everyone would not only see her knickers, but all the bits in between her legs. And so she said she was too embarrassed to parachute. So with the most extraordinary piloting, she actually landed the plane safely.
Okay.
Down freaking plane. What are you doing? Bringing me half a plane. But it was miraculous. She got this incredible medal for it. She was acclaimed this heroine for saving the plane.
Oh, wow.
And she said, I've been embarrassed ever since because I only did it so they wouldn't see my knickers. But I didn't put that one. I didn't put that one in the book. There was just nowhere to put it. There's so many stories like that I would have loved to have put in the book.
Yeah. And when you've been doing your research, is there anything that you found that really surprised you?
Probably not, because it was all fairly gradual.
Yeah.
Look, the thing that really did surprise me was that the Duke, well, the king as he was then, actually didn't read the papers, that it was a trick. And I mean, his mother was there, his brother was there. He didn't ever even read it. He just went like that and just signed every page without reading it. He had no idea what he was signing. He'd been told he would be made king regent for Elizabeth. And as she was just a child, he would be king regent for a long time. And probably by the time she was an adult, he would stay king regent, because after all, she was a girl. So he expected to be king, but as king regent, he could have married Wallis Simpson, but she wasn't in England. She was getting divorced. And if she'd been there, she had the brains, and she would have said, look, read it. Read what you're signing.
Yeah.
That really did surprise me, that anyone would be silly enough to sign all of these papers without. But then again, as I said, look, his mother was there, his brother was there, the Prime Minister was there, Winston Churchill was there, who'd been sort of his mentor, trying to get him to be a possible king. And became obvious that he just never would be and never could be. And looming, they simply couldn't afford to keep him on the throne.
Yeah.
That really did set me back, thinking, wow, I mean, that's that really is extraordinary. But as I said, that's not new. It's been material that's been gradually being put together over about 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, I have to say it's nothing that I'd ever heard of before, so I'll have to read up on it a bit more.
Yeah, look, the other one too was the little mosquito aircraft. Nearly every bombing they did for the first year in Germany, they got the wrong targets, and they realised that they were just were too inexperienced to find the right target. And so they developed these tiny little craft. They were literally made of plywood. They were so light that they couldn't even take a weapon. So they were completely unarmed. Most of the pilots were colonials experienced because, and they would fly these tiny little unarmed things. First, they would find the target, they would locate the target, but then they had nothing to fight back. So they were incredible pilots. Their only way of getting back was to actually dodge through clouds and et cetera, et cetera. And it just seems impossible that you could have, if you look at one of these planes, the Mosquitoes, they are literally just a tiny engine and plywood.
They are
And
just
yet
like
they
mosquitoes.
led these in, with no, not even a gun or anything else. And that also, the fact they existed didn't surprise me. The fact that we'd never heard of them, and the incredible heroism of the men who flew them, knowing that they had no way of escaping or anything else in these tiny craft. But there were all sorts of and anecdotes like that, I think, rather than the bulk of the knowledge of it as well. Possibly the only other one that really surprised me was in the book, the luxury flight they take from London to Australia, that there was in, I think, 1946 a plan to have it. So it didn't ever happen. They decided that there wasn't enough demand for it. But there was this one absolute incredible luxury flight with absolutely everything, and this great big comfortable aircraft. Qantas route that was developed afterwards was much more Spartan and much smaller. But here was this enormous luxury plane with champagne and ice cream and pictures and things no one in Britain had seen for a decade. Suddenly there. So all sorts of lovely sort of tidbits like that. They're completely unexpected. I think some of the other one too, though, was how much people just accepted and went through day after day after day. That with the rationing, including in Australia, it took about a day a week, if you added up the hours, just to queue for your rations. So it wasn't just the fact that you rationed. You had to, spending about 10 hours a week just queuing for the food. And it didn't stop with the war. In fact, the rationing got even worse after the war because everyone was recovering. The factories had to be remachined and all sorts of other things. So after the war, conditions, in fact, were worse for the average person. And there wasn't even the thing, when the war is won, everything will be wonderful. And the war is won, and things don't return. Things don't change for a very, very, very long time after the war. And I think that also surprised me, but also I was born around about the time things did start to improve. So it made a lot of things in my childhood make sense. The fact that Grandma would always keep the paper the butter was wrapped in. So she'd never throw that away. I mean, it wasn't saving money. She would always keep it, and she'd always put it over the peas so that the peas got the last of the butter, never wasted.
My mother always kept the butter paper as well, but she used it like for using to grease baking tins and things like that. Interesting.
I suddenly realised a lot of the frugality I grew up with. That's really where it came from. Just the habits. There's always. Did your family have the dripping tin? Where okay, if it's chicken, it was chicken one day, lamb the other day. All within the dripping tin, and the dripping was never wasted. It was always used for something. And, somehow we all survived and didn't get food poisoning.
Yeah.
But
And I'm looking at the wombat behind you. I always love hearing about your wombat stories. How are the wombats going at the moment?
oh, well, that's slightly embarrassing.
Okay.
There is a female wombat in what shall we say is an interesting state for male wombats, and you
Okay.
can smell it half a kilometre
Oh,
away. And look, if I can smell it half a kilometre away, be very glad that we can see and hear each other, but you can't smell
okay.
what's coming in this window because the whole garden and orchard just smells very strongly of female wombat. Luckily, it only lasts for about a week, and then
So
that'll
does
be it
that
for the
mean all
year.
the male wombats are all hanging out?
It probably does.
Yeah.
I hope so, because then the smell will cease.
Yeah.
So we won't have it again next month.
Mm,
Um, so yes, the males can smell it about 10 kilometres away,
yeah, okay.
and possibly,
Fair,
I'd say
yeah.
probably more if I can smell it. What um, dogs can smell 10,000 times better than humans, and wombats can smell 10,000 times better than dogs.
Oh, really?
So
Oh.
So look, if
Mm,
I can smell it 500 metres away, yes, I
mm,
think we've got male wombats being very, very interested. But
yeah, so they might be coming from long away.
I think yes, that
Mm,
they may very well be coming
mm,
from a great distance. But it's always hilarious. It's a bit like sort of peering through people's windows of their private life. And I often feel so I'm really doing that with the wombats. But
yeah. Well, I hope
um,
you have some
yes,
baby wombats coming.
yes, they've no idea that I'm actually sort of observing
You
and peering
watch,
at their
yeah.
very, very private life. Thank you very much. No concern of humans,
No.
but being wombats, they've no idea that what I can see through the window.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
but
They're
it
oblivious
is.
to it all.
Oh, it is fascinating. My favourite one was Phil, who was actually brought up by humans, and Phil had a very good way. Wombat courtship usually goes on for about 3 days, as the male and the female chase each other, bite each other, what have you. It's all very energetic and noisy. Um, Phil had been raised by humans because he'd been badly injured as a young wombat, and so he'd spent a year in care with
Mm.
various surgeries. And he worked out that if you actually sneaked up on a female wombat when they were eating the wombat nuts that we put out during the drought as feed, and the wombats absolutely loved them. If you actually sneaked up and did the deed, you didn't have to do all of the 3
Oh,
days
the
courtship.
chasing ram.
So,
Okay.
yeah. So yeah. So you see Phil just sneaking up, and the female would look a bit. I mean, yeah, right, okay, but she wouldn't stop eating.
Yeah.
But he was a pure grey wombat, which is quite rare. And for 3 years, every baby wombat around here was pure grey.
Oh, really?
Phil had really worked out how to do things.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Funny. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I often feel very slightly
Mm,
guilty about how much I eavesdrop, and I'm a peeping tom on
mm.
wombats.
And tell
But
me,
it is.
what are you working on at the moment?
Um, Actually, I'm now working on a book for next year, and it's actually really it is something I've only discovered recently.
Mm,
Cleopatra was in Rome for 1 year when she was 11 and 12. Her older sister had seized the throne from their father. Cleopatra was actually in line for the throne. Um, and something happened in that year. In that year in Rome, trying to get someone to give them 20 million sesterces so they could hire an army
mm.
to get Berenice on the throne, something happened. This girl, who everyone is a non-entity, went to Rome. But when after that year in Rome, suddenly everyone is talking about her. What happened in that year in Rome to Cleopatra that you got to look? She wasn't beautiful. She actually had a great big nose.
Mm,
She had rather skimpy red hair. She wasn't beautiful, but everyone
Mm,
just said she was completely and utterly unforgettable.
mm,
So what turned this um, this gangly, completely boring girl that no one was interested in? What happened in that year to Cleopatra? So this is a book for young people, but it is something that I only came across about 3 years ago.
okay. No,
Um,
that sounds interesting. Yeah.
just this reference to the fact
Mm,
that she spent a
mm,
year in Rome,
mm,
and finding out where. Once I found out where she spent that year, and then I actually found out who she was with, etc., etc., and I've been able to build up what happened, which is actually fairly
mm,
exciting. So, in that one year, she became the woman who was going to be queen in 2 years
yeah.
later.
Wow. Yeah, that
Just
sounds really interesting.
yeah.
Mm, mm,
Yes, so for any 12-year-old girl who's actually dreaming of becoming Pharaoh or
mm.
Queen, this is how you
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
it.
And growing up, had you always been interested in history?
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, Look, it was more than that. My family always told stories, and they were
Mm,
stories of our family.
mm.
It was stories. Grandma would tell me stories about when she was a little girl, but she'd also tell me stories that her grandmother told me about when she was a little girl,
Oh,
and
wow.
who told.
Mm,
So I had stories of at least 6 or 8 generations of the women of my family,
mm.
and we just had
That's pretty
asked for
amazing.
stories. Um,
Mm,
so the stories that I grew up with were family stories, but they were stories of the history. And also, we had the diary of my I forget how many great grandmothers. She was one of Australia's first free settlers, the first, and she kept a diary from the year before they set out and then on the boat, and then all of the time. And that too was fascinating. It still is fascinating to
mm,
me. Um, it gave me a completely different view of the early colony, of what happened. And
mm.
there's no reason to disbelieve what she wrote. But partly too, it was actually really boring. It was, I mean, how many eggs and what someone said and things like that.
Yeah.
And that was interesting too, that
Mm,
so much of the part is actually pretty much like today.
mm.
Okay, we get breakfast, we do the washing up. What are the chooks doing? Um, but it was also, um, near the beginning of the diary, she wonders whether it's a sin to love a man as much as she loves her husband. Surely love like this should just be forgotten.
Mm.
She and the book ends. Um, Yesterday we buried my beloved husband, and now I shall write no more in this book because my life has ended.
Oh, wow.
And she gets another 20 something years after that. And in her will, she asks that the diary be left to her oldest daughter and
Mm.
her oldest daughter, and to go down through the line
Oh, really?
to from the daughter. So yes, it's in my possession
Mm.
now. Um, I don't have a daughter. I don't have a granddaughter either.
Mm.
So it will be one of the nieces, who will. I think we're at the stage though where we do need to give it custody of it to, somewhere where they will look after it properly. I mean, I do have
Mm.
it in the proper, acid-free paper and pouch and things
Mm.
like that.
Mm.
Um, but it probably is time that it did go to, on permanent loan to somewhere. But I think
Yeah.
that'll need to be a decision with whoever I
Mm.
decide, or whoever decides on my death, because it's not on my will, come to think of it.
Mm.
But the whole family know about it, so they can. Maybe it's easy just to get them to decide.
Mm.
Um,
That's a
Actually, come
pretty
to that's
amazing thing
really good
to
idea.
have then.
I'll,
Mm.
yeah, I'll leave it to them to actually work
Mm.
out
To
who will
work
take
out what to do.
responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I just I adored history.
Mm.
And also too, the only book I could read in church was very boring, but I was allowed to read the Bible. So I
Mm.
read that as history over and
Mm.
over and over.
Mm.
Um, it was, my childhood was probably, 80% boredom, 9% terror. But the really good bits were actually books. And they weren't books about living in suburban Brisbane. They were mostly historical books. Science fiction and fantasy really wasn't very big then.
No.
They mostly were books set in the past. Even the books like the Enid Blyton ones were set in the past in World War II or the 1930s, because that's when she wrote them. So even which weren't intended to be historical fiction actually were historical fiction. They were fighting the Nazis and doing things like that. So no, it's always been partly my escape, but also optimism as well. It's good. It is. People do tend to think that tomorrow is going to be like today. And when you look at history, look, it probably will be. Tomorrow probably will be pretty much like today, but one day it won't be. And it's incredibly reassuring to know just how disastrous the past has been. And yet people were happy, they fell in love, they did wonderful things. They had joyous parties, and sometimes even at the worst of times, people are doing the most wonderful things, but also falling in love and being happy and hugging their kids. And it's very optimistic. Humanity, look, we're all descended from people who have already survived plagues and depressions and wars and tsunamis and things like that. We're descended from the survivors. So humans are good at climate change. We're descended from the people who survived the Ice Age, which has been pretty tough. And when the ice melted, it's even worse. I mean, global warming's got nothing on the end of the Ice Age.
No.
That's actually very optimistic. Our ancestors have already survived, or we wouldn't be here. And so it is actually very comforting in these days to be a historian. To know that, yes, things will change, but nonetheless, even at the worst of times, there can be wonderful times. And even at the worst of times, we'll probably get through it and we'll be fine.
Yeah. And I have to ask you, if you could go back to a period in time, just for a day, what would you choose, or when would you choose?
It would be exactly here, 110,000 years ago, before humans came to the valley. Humans probably came to this part of Australia about 80,000 years ago. I'd like to be here and see the megafauna. I would have to choose. I don't even want a day. I'd have to take lunch, and I would choose a very, very tall tree to get up, preferably one that didn't have a fierce animal, because quite a lot of fierce animals could climb back then. So I'd choose my tree very, very, very carefully, and possibly take some capsicum spray with me to deter anything from climbing up the tree to eating me. But I would have loved to actually see what this valley would have been like before humans came here. And to actually see the megafauna, the wombats the size of minibuses. And, Tasmanian tigers here on the mainland, and giant kangaroos like that. So yes, I would be exactly here, but 110,000 years ago.
Yeah, and talking about those extinct animals now, I saw on the news tonight that they've brought back, I think it was some wolf sort of thing that has been extinct, I think they said for 15,000 years or something like that. So imagine if they were able to clone one, like a Tasmanian devil or one of those giant kangaroos or something like that.
I think at some stage we're probably actually going to think, are these animals we actually do want back again?
Yeah.
Which ones
do
which one, back, and which ones did our ancestors very carefully get rid of for a reason?
Yeah.
I'm Yes, I'd like to see the Tasmanian tigers here for a day, and quite a lot of the ferocious animals, like the shook-faced kangaroo and things like that. But my word, I don't think
Not all the time, yeah. You don't want one
thank you
hopping
very
up and banging on your window.
No, we're talking animals that just be flapping the house.
Well,
And they
thanks so
wouldn't just be
much
watching
for
forest.
talking to me. It's been great talking to you as always. And have to say again, I love The Whisperer's War. Like I said, it was alerting me to something that I hadn't heard before. So really enjoyed that. And can't wait to read more of your books.
Okay, good.
Thanks.
I'm very, very glad you like it.
And
Okay.
thanks to everyone who joined in. Bye.
Yes. Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you so much.